Welcome back to the Axis of Genius podcast. I am DH and I am joined with my man, Blake Chalfant. And, we're kind of exploring different ways of going about all this business and just really kind of finding the golden thread as we pick up some momentum. And Blake came in and has written a poem. And it sounds like it's dual purpose because he's going to an open mic later today. So our homie has been at the forge, metaphorically and somewhat literally. So I figure as a way to kind of toss this over to you, Blake, I want to hear a little bit about I want to invoke this sort of Bardic archetype, like a little bit of the backstory of the artist. It's like, talk to me about like what's moving through to bring this poem together and then maybe share the poem.
Yeah, beautiful. Great to be back. So for context, the poem, so we have an open mic in a course that I'm going through right now. So there's that element of like constraint and deadline where I know I have to have something ready. And I didn't, I hadn't until 2 days ago. And part of the prompt is to create a piece of art that's sort of giving certain parts of you a voice. And so like last week, the whole module we were on was all about parts work. So integrating these different parts of us. And so using the open mic as a space to share a piece of art, share a poem that's kind of like giving different parts of us the stage to speak. And so for me, one of the big kind of core themes and parts of me that I've really been connecting with and that has been wanting to come forward in a bigger way has sort of been this, I guess you could say like my calling, whether you want to think about that as a part of you or not. But another aspect of the context is we've been doing a lot of dream work, and my dreams are just constantly like my calling coming forward, literally just knocking at the door, being like, yo, let me in, and all about me, expressing my desire and going more fully all in on sort of the calling, which if you're into dream work, apparently that tends to show up as like intimate relationships with the opposite sex. So a lot of like past girlfriend and last night was actually a new woman named Savannah that I met in my dream. And it's always like there's like an element of cheating or they're choosing someone else or something like this. And it's just so wild if I'm interpreting that as like calling that, it's like they're with someone else or I'm not fully expressing my desire and going forward. And anyway, I could say a lot more, but that's sort of the backstory of this poem. And this poem is, I don't know if you call it a poem, short essay maybe, is kind of a combination of a couple dreams. And it also isn't necessarily one part talking the whole time. It kind of feels like different pieces coming in, but there's definitely a through line of the theme in this. So, and there's a song at the end, but I'm not gonna do it because I don't have my guitar with me. But here it goes. A desert of exiles. I'm scared of you, and I'm scared of the great beyond you call me into. The desert is a harrowing place. What will happen if I pull on this thread? What will happen if I let you in? Will the room change? Will it implode? Will there be no room left at all? You see, I have a life. I have friends. I have acceptance. I have stability. What will you do to that? Like a perfectly made altar with a pure white cloth, I'm scared you're going to shatter it all. Broken glass, torn tapestries, crumbling at the sound of your call. Surely the stage will break. Surely the promises are fake. Surely the path ahead is a mistake. Safe passage across the desert beyond? I think I'll stay within the village where I belong. Fuck. I've tried that before. A hollow existence, an empty core. Do you promise that there's more? A balm to my aching heart? A way I can play a new part? Maybe even to share my art? Please go easy on me. But not really. I kind of like it rough. I kind of want to ravish culture with your fangs and rip apart old paradigms to let 'em hang. I want to draw blood with the penetrating presence you demand and the inner orchestra you command. Deep down, I know this symphony carries songs that will save lives and inspire new generations. You are the composer I would lay my life down for. I would cross the untamed deserts just to have a taste of your sweet melodies. Because when I'm dying of thirst, the echo of your songs bring me back. When I'm lost in the mirages of the world, your notes help me find my way. You've always been there even when I didn't deserve you. You're like the friend who sits on the other side of my closed door, talking to silence, reminding me that there is more, that I could be more. You knew. Somehow you knew that I would come back, that I would come looking for you, that I would open the door. Like a story that needs no telling, the smile on your face and the gaze of your eyes says it all. You never had a doubt. You never gave up on me. And when you heard the birds fly overhead, you knew the day had come that the prophets had said, He will return. He will remember. And your songs will guide him through the wandering wasteland. This is the call to all the lost wanderers journeying this vast desert beyond. You have a place here. Come join in our song. Singing, there is always a way back. There is always a way.
Wow, bro.
The song has more, but that was like that's the chorus.
Yeah, a little sneak peek. Wow. Whew. That was a saga. That's an odyssey. I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit
Across the
speechless,
desert.
to be honest. Yeah, a little speechless.
Yeah. Yeah, it it doesn't feel like one single part, or maybe it's different desires of the part, because on the one hand there's like this deep fear of what happens if I let that in. What happens if I let the bigness of my being in? And one of the dreams that came through, we were like in a very ceremonial space with people there, and there's this beautiful white altar in the middle of the room with candles and cloths, and there's a freaking like what's the word, not a porcupine, but the ones with the hard shells. Anyway,
Armadillo?
there's an armadillo running around the ceremonial space, and it keeps on trying to tear the cloth off the altar and like knock the candles off. And so, for me in that dream, it was like that the altar really represented sort of this kind of my like sort of persona that I present to the world and everything. There's just this deep fear of, what happens when I pull the cloth off, and this part of me that's really trying to come through and wake up. And so on the one hand, there is that sort of deep fear of what happens when the metaphorical forest fire comes through and all that was before is, changed. And but then on the other hand, there's like such this warrior archetype who literally would put his life on the line for that, calling. And it's like, so it's interesting to hold the kind of polarities of both of those at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're dealing with fundamental polarities at play. One being very much the human instinct for familiarity, security, continuity. Like, let's just make sure that we're safe, we're surviving, we have everything we need, like, don't rock the boat. And then that other polarity of like, whoa, everything is changing. And what's moving through is a warrior's call. And that's potent. And there's a lot of uncertainty in that.
Yeah. It's almost like the name of the game is uncertainty. That it's playing.
100%. I mean, just this morning, I was feeling into just what a radical time we're in. And, we can hit all the notes that anyone who's listening will be aware of. It's technologically changing. The political landscape is changing. There's this like feeling for me that like how quote unquote democracy, or how, the kind of organizational systems that were, might really dramatically change in the coming years. And just this feeling of like this, this project we've been in, the last, let's call it 20 or 30 years, where we've had this relative stable sense of, coming into, the years 2000s or something, like it's changing. It's definitely changing. And I can feel the parts of myself that are like, but I kind of like how it's going. I've kind of figured out my niche within, the brokenness of it somehow.
Yeah.
And yet, like when I kind of step back into an even deeper view of history, time, cosmovision, it's like, of course this was temporary. Of
Yeah.
course this time was temporary. And I feel this sense right now that even though we don't know what's coming, there is a deep trust that there's stages ahead, and we've just been in, culturally, we've been in a stage, and then maybe we can bring it back to the personal, if that makes sense. But, like personally, we go through these stages and they're never meant to last, that there's
Yeah.
almost this falsity that arises of, if I feel this way, I'm going to feel this way all the time. Or if this is my thing, then it's going to be my thing forever. There's temporary comforts in that, and there's even wisdom in staying with something for a period of time. And
Yeah.
yet, I feel like the deeper truth of impermanence is a potent, it's a potent clarity to be with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that it's spirituality 101, embrace the unknown, uncertainty. But it's just one of these things that is the hardest for humans, no matter feels like no matter how much we say those things or whatever, there's still these deeper layers that are clinging to the certainty and whatnot. And I can imagine that on some level, even though yeah, like beyond the perils of this time, the chaos of and the crises of this time, there is sort of this lingering belief that, okay, once we get through this, if there is a more beautiful place, once we reach that, then finally there will be certainty or something like that. But I feel like that's just the name of the game of life, these cycles of structure and anti-structure and uncertainty. And
Mm.
I often think, even though I don't always necessarily take this view, that life's rejoicing at the uncertainty. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, because in a way, it's just another name for potential.
Mm-hmm.
And as humans, like, can we leave room at the table for uncertainty? And this might be an interesting thread to go into, but I've often thought about, um, how much we're thinking about finding solutions in our time, solutions to the way forward. What's the solution for our political environment? What's the solution for our um, environmental environment? And yeah, and I just wonder if we're missing something when we try to minimize uncertainty at all, and we try and create these maps and plans that are completely concrete where there is zero uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And or another word, unknown. There's like we try and make every single last detail certain, known, so we figure out all the kinks. And I just wonder if we're missing something as humans within that. And it's a big shift. It's a big shift. If I was going to sit across someone like Sam Harris or something like this, and we're someone like that, and we're talking about these issues of the world, my honest view is, though, like, I really feel like if we're thinking about the full swinging of humanity and what really is the lesson that we're learning, part of the lesson of our time that we're learning is that we can't do this alone. That it's
Mm-hmm.
not just a human ego trying to figure out the world, that we're a part of a much bigger web. And so what is our role in terms of leaving room at the table for that bigger web? And so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine, in my heart of hearts, I imagine like a society where, when we're actually in the same way on a personal level, when I'm orienting to my path, I'm leaving a lot of room for unknown and things to unfold and whatnot, and attuning to life. Like, I imagine a society where we actually can in some ways emulate that on like a societal, systemic level. And I know we're not maybe quite there yet, but it's something that I think about.
Yeah, yeah. I grok what you're saying. It's a big ask, I think, in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And I think
Yeah.
there's many reasons one could unpack that. But I think as a starting point, just to, get into the riff with you, like I really do feel like the ignorance is the basic condition. And another way of saying that that's maybe less negative is just like the slice of the pie chart of the you don't even know what you don't know. is like that's primarily the pie chart. Just I'll say that for myself. Like I'm happy to admit it's like mostly swimming in ignorance over here, like barely hanging on by my bootstraps kind of thing. And yet like the pie chart of expertise of like being able to be this person where it's like I'm David Henry Rickenbach and I know something, and this knowledge that I know that I've earned and that I got my graduate degree around, like that's the valid stable ground. And there's truth to that. There's truth to becoming a knowledgeable person within a specific domain, and then making solid ground and having a container around this. And I feel like there's so many different ways I could riff on this, but for me, maybe I'll just leave it here and then toss it back over. Like that's a like value domain where you're like in this zone of expertise and this zone of knowledge, say, like for me, like learning a whole bunch about psychology and creating those parameters out of which deep psychological healing can happen. Like it's of immense benefit. And yet like even in the clarification of those knowledge, and even in like the practice of say these frameworks and ways of relating that create all this meaningful healing interaction, like I was in a peyote ceremony a couple years ago, and I was so in the medicine, and the peyote is so unbelievably clear that it's all made up. It's like there's this beautiful image of the I say let's call them the ancient ones, this to
Yeah.
bring a little bit of mythopoetry into it, who would go out on the pilgrimages and they would eat tons of the medicine, and then they would recreate the whole cosmology from the journey. They would recreate language, they would recreate the creation stories. And that image I feel like is so potent because a lot of us are in some sort of discovery phase of where are we and what's really going on. And I think that death, life, rebirth process is so vital. It's so like of the essence, I think, of what you're pointing to, Blake, with like
Mm,
authentic discovery of solution. Because it's
mm,
like we can gain some knowledge or some mastery around, say, I'm just using psychology because it's relevant to my own life, and then out of that we can learn the scales and then make some improvisational music, et cetera. But if we somehow lose the plot that that's just like one tiny sliver of a genre of the many ways that the muse of life can flow through and make music, like then we're going to be stuck. We're not going to hit the next wave as it's coming through and writing the next wave of evolutionary novelty.
yeah. And there's so much here. I think what comes up for me when you talk about all the learning you've done in the psychology, and then on the other hand, how that's just like such a glimpse of the pie chart of the everything or whatever, and however you said that, like it reminds me of this idea that there's like just stages, and on the path there's I was talking to a client about this yesterday. Like it's so contextual. Like everything is just so contextual. I think about our life like we're on one horizon and we're looking out, kind of like the mountain thing we talked about. And then we're looking out at the next horizon. Then we go into the valley, and the steps taken to get we ultimately we want to get to the horizon, but the steps to get there is so sometimes we're literally like running in circles for 2 weeks, but that was like the essential kind of step to actually take the next step towards the horizon. Or sometimes we're like trying to keep moving forward, but it's feeling off, and then realize we actually could take a right turn, but mentally we're like, why would we take a right turn when we're trying to go straight? And then you realize when you take the right turn, it actually is like a loop around. And when you loop around, you see that there was a giant brick wall that you were trying to move through when you were going straight. And so what I'm trying to speak to here is like, it's so contextual in this exact moment. When you talk about catching the waves, it's like the wave of this exact moment and what you're feeling, what you're feeling called to do and asked to do and how to be. And again, we're needing to find that fine line of resistance versus listening to nature and rhythms. But for me, for example, so much of what we talk about and where we meet each other is really this like obsession for training and kind of doing the thing and like this let's go energy, and it's beautiful. And there's also like, I feel so many seasons within that. And for me, for example, the past 3 days I've been so tired when I wake up. I'm not waking up and going right into my beautiful morning routine. Like I've been getting up and reading my book for like 40 minutes before I even meditate. And it's weird and it feels a bit strange. But when I do it, there's like such a deep well
Uh,
of nourishment. And
mm,
so I think I'm, the life and death cycles and everything like this, it
mm,
feels really alive for me right now.
mm. Well, as I'm hearing you describe this, Blake, I'm just feeling this deep uprising of just like how much fun this is, like how cool it is that we're doing this right now and that we've chosen this. And I want to try to create a through line to your experience right now to last November, because we were in one of these quote unquote transformational retreats about a year ago. And you had this deep share around like really embracing the winter. You'll have to correct me as I go if I'm messing up any parts of your story, because I'm trying to somewhat accurately represent you. Actually, I'm trying to accurately represent you. And you were like in this experience of like, what would it be like if I really allowed myself to like really be fully present to the season of winter? And it felt like there was a deep gravity. And the through line that I want to try to make, or try to populate this with kind of some of the themes that are emerging here, is one of the things that I noticed that we do here, like me and you, and it's just a huge part of our lives, and I feel like it's a part of many people's lives who like really are on this journey of becoming, is iteration after iteration after iteration. Like we have a thought, we're inspired momentarily, we're going to try something out, see how it goes, and then sort of iterate as you go. And there might even be a connection link there with the image you were just describing about kind of like going right and then seeing there was a wall there. And so we're like somehow constantly in navigation, like what's happening in my life, what's like the horizon, what's literally on my calendar, and what am I going to do with this? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of putting this whole hodgepodge out there because I'm fascinated that like you're feeling this seasonal shift again of like the brakes are on. You like went from pretty like red hot motivation like a week or two ago, where you're like posting videos of yourself on the beach like lifting driftwood, and maybe you're gonna do that later today. I don't know, but it's just like different flavors going through now. We're like, all right, I'm waking up, I'm reading for 45 minutes, and
Yeah.
yeah,
It's really interesting. One, I don't know, I don't know how well I did after that beautiful winter riff last year. I probably failed to some degree. I probably made some sort of progress, but I can fully say it's not something that I've gotten down. And I'm envious of the people that have. Like, I really have this dream of spending a couple of months in the winter, like in a cabin with a wood-fired stove, reading by the fire. And um, I'm not there yet. But what's really interesting is that I've definitely felt a shift in my energy the past few days as I'm kind of speaking to this change in pace and taking a right instead of going straight on the path. But it's not, the output hasn't actually changed. It's it's gotten even more like, um, I basically started post. I'm gonna start posting every day till the rest of the year, which so in that way I actually cranked up the dial. So it's an interesting nuance to talk about, actually, that like winter doesn't necessarily have to mean less output. That's sort of the stereotype of like, okay, shut everything down and just be quiet. But maybe it's a different energy, and maybe what changes as you shift into that energy is the things you're outputting or the things that you're focusing on change. And so for me, really the shift has been getting myself ready for like this next season, for the spring, for the January, for the February. And so the nature of what I'm doing has changed. It's
mm,
not it's not tending the same old fields every day. I'm actually tending certain kind of different fields that are going to be sprouting come January, February that I haven't been focusing on. And so
mhm.
it's changing, and there's definitely a different quality of how I'm approaching it, and maybe the routines are shifting around a little bit. But um, yeah, I just think that's a interesting sort of distinction that doesn't mean doing nothing necessarily.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fascinating. And I feel like I want to double click on your movement into posting every single day. I heard you somewhat jokingly refer to like in the forge, like if anyone wants to join my manic episode, I'm going to be posting every day. So, there's some
Yeah.
kind of like, I'm playing here with you. There's some sort of sense of like, okay, there's an uprising energy. You're going to be posting every day. And then I think the other piece I really want you to speak to, because I feel like many people listening could benefit a lot from your mindset and your perspective here, which is something around really harnessing the beauty of Instagram. And I know for myself, this is like a very interesting mindset shift, because I've definitely like spent many, many years, like maybe the last 8 years, like in the dregs of just like, this stuff is toxic, this is bad, it's ruining people's attention. Like there's all sorts of like negative things that have kind of gone along with my sense of like what, it would mean to be quote unquote posting every day.
Yeah.
And that's changing a lot. Like I'm feeling personally in this radically different mindset around it. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other piece here I'll try to put on the table here for you to speak to is, we talk a lot about these polarities, the negative side or the positive side, or the tension that emerges from holding two seeming opposing opposites. And you said something to the effect of like, what if Instagram was like the greatest gift ever? Which for me was like, oh yeah, like I haven't ever held that polarity. I've definitely held the side of it's terrible and it's ruining us, but I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
really ever held the perspective of like, this is like an immeasurable gift.
Mm.
And I noticed that point of view is definitely still working some magic inside of me. So I know I just put a lot out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Hoping you can address all this.
Yeah. Before I do that, I just want to say, because it just reminded me that your last post I loved so much. And I think as we're still very much transitioning into the digital world, which I think, people think that we're fully arrived there. I feel like we're still very much arriving. Like it's still very much in the evolution of what is our human race going to look like in relation to these digital platforms and landscapes. And it's like, we're
Mhm.
still very much in the birthing process of that. And so I think there's going to be so many different varieties of people, and just to put an idea there, as I can frame yours in, is like, I love looking at like your Instagram profile or something as your digital world. You could see it as a digital altar, but like your digital home. This is your digital home. And as time keeps going on, I think it's going to feel even more like we have these digital homes. And there's going to be some people who their entire existence in their home is being addicted and consuming. And then there's going to be other people who really have, I think, found sort of the golden thread of what it can be to be on these platforms, of what it can be to, build a really beautiful digital home where you've created these virtuous cycles where you're providing benefit through what is coming out of your home, and you're also really enjoying it, and it's created this kind of fun creative process. And so I think we're there, and part of the reason I say we're not fully arriving is because there's still so many people who are sort of I need to stop saying sort of, who are in resistance to it, who are in resistance to this idea of the digital home or whatever. But I think as time goes on, it's just going to become normal, and then there we are. So all that to say, I think there's going to be many different varieties of the digital home, and some people, maybe it is speaking more to people they don't know, and making stuff into the algorithm, and not that that's necessarily a bad thing. Then I think there's going to be a lot of people like your post the other day, which for anyone who's listening who didn't see it, super familiar, super speaking to people that and like people that just want to get on and be like, oh cool, this is DH giving a little check-in into your life. There was no I'm trying to hook you. No, it's just like, yo, this is my update. What's up guys? And it was so like human and beautiful. And whether or not for you that feels like your style, I think for some people that is going to be more of their style, and it's cool. It's like, you're not going to send a check into everyone, but I get to get on Instagram and be like, oh cool, this is like DH's common, this is his experience right now. And so more to say on that, but I think it was a really cool kind of new style that I haven't seen so much.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
so, okay, to answer your question, do you want to say anything about what I just said about that? Like if there was any part of that experience that was interesting or new to you, and then you can throw it back, or I'm happy to keep going.
Yeah. Well, it's really incredible to feel the energy, like really to feel the transmission of your cosmovision of the digital homes. And as you're speaking to that, I actually feel a paradigm shift happening in my brain because I have so deeply inhabited the negative side of things of like the digital world. It's eating our brains and it's transpersonal and it's taking up more and more real estate inside of our heads. And I really grappled with that inside of my being between this deep sense that whatever our planet is doing, like this is being birthed out of unity and I'm trusting and I'm flowing and I'm growing and I'm going to adapt with it.
Yeah.
And the other part of myself, which is like, this is really bad. Like, this is really bad. And actually feeling super judgmental of so many friends. I was like, kind of writing them off. I'm like, oh, they're just like hopeless addicts now. They're just scrolling and really, wanting to distance myself from that. And
Yeah.
so to feel the new energy or an energy that's like a integral prior unity, this is where we are in the birth canal. And then the other thing that's present here, which might be worth even more attention, is the distinction between consumers and creators. And I feel like there's a huge juicy thread you like kind of pointed to, which is there's definitely a lot of people we could say who are victims of the shimmer. They're addicts, they're scrolling. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's not good. It's really junky. And yet all of those people probably have the potentiality to flip that switch and start becoming digital creators and actually finding profoundly enlivening processes of self-expression and connection. And that toggle is fascinating. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a few different threads there.
Yeah. 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 And so to come back to your question, a big part of the reason that I'm doing this 30-day challenge, one is just it arose and it felt really right. And coming back to the sort of your checklist is the birth canal idea. Like I had all of my previous habits that I had been working on, I had gotten to a point where they were pretty dialed, and I got to this point and it was like there was this just a completion, and in that completion this is what arose next. So I'm still really chewing on that. The checklist is the birth canal. um but a big part of the 30 days that I'm doing on Instagram is so that I can get more comfortable living in my home. It's like, this is my digital home and I still don't feel fully comfortable living in my home. It's like, what's that about? And so like I want to just fully land in that of like, oh my gosh, this is my home. I love my home. I love being here. I'm not being here because I have to. I'm not being here because this is a convenient way to sell more products. I am genuinely here because I want to be here. And there's many facets to like what goes into that desire to be here, but at the core of it, I actually enjoy my experience of being here and I feel really called to being here. Um and I can create what I want. I can say what I want. And it all feels really good. And for me, it's going through the filter of also being of benefit to people. And so it's a both and. It's not I'm just spitting whatever I want, but there's a sort of feedback loop created between what I naturally like to create and what I naturally feel is of benefit to the people I want to be speaking to. They start to magnetize each other. But that only comes through doing the thing. And so again, part of the 30 days is also just to be fully in the pocket for 30 days because there's magic that happens, the momentum, the different styles of the creation. And I can feel there's like a crystallization for me around who I actually want to be more of speaking to. I still haven't landed in that. What's the styles? And there's so many different experiments I want to run with different ways of creating videos. And um, so I really just had the call to throw myself in there. And a big part of the experiment for me also is what we're talking about, attention and our relationship to technology and all of it is just so incredibly alive for me. And I really have this feeling right now in my life of it's not do or die is not the right way to say it, but like this is the time. There's an urgency to really sound the alarm on this. And for me, it's like I'm sounding the alarm in my own life on this. And as I do that, I want to bring as many people into that vision, to that process as I possibly can. Because I know that so many people are drowning, kind of this image of I am learning how to swim and building a ship, and I want to bring as many people that can fit on my ship as possible. And so a big part of the Instagram for me is wanting to share the process and really talk about attention. And like throughout these 30 days, I also have a note card, and I am jotting down every single time that I pick up my phone, making a note every single time, and I'm planning to do that for an entire month. And so I want to share about this because from what I've realized as talking to many people, but specifically talking to some of these young men who are in the heart of pop culture, who probably will never listen to this, so many of them are aware that the phones, the attention is a massive problem. Most of them have no idea what to do. Like, my opinion is that most people are at the place where they say, that's a huge problem. I'm suffering a lot because of it. And there's not really anything we can do about it. There has been so few solutions shown for how we can actually um, solve this issue and do something about it within our own lives. And I am finding stuff that works. And so for me, I've kind of teeter-tottered on going all in, and I really feel like I'm going all in on it right now. And I want to, bring as many people into that as I can. And just the last thing to say about that is, for years, I constantly would come back to the same realization, which is if I could just get my relationship to my phone in order, my life would change drastically. Everything would get so much better.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm naturally someone who loves solving problems, and this is like the biggest one right now for me that I'm wanting to solve, because I do believe it's solvable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the listeners, I'm just making a timestamp right now. We're tracking when the lightning strikes, and from like a friend perspective over here, it's like they talk about in mixed martial arts how some guys they come out and they're like ready to go, and it's like they're super dangerous in round one, and you're just like, oh snap. And then there's other guys that like they warm up a bit. They're like getting reads in round one, and they're kind of figuring out their game plan based on how the other dude is. And I feel like, this is our fourth podcast, so I'm kind of like feeling into your style here, and I'm just like, I feel like Blake just gives, like round three, round four is just like, oh, he's warmed up now. He's dropping bombs. I'm taking some notes over here now.
So fun.
Just all by way of saying, yeah, man, just transmission received. And I feel like I want to like kind of pull back a little bit of the cosmovision, because on the one hand, as your friend, brother in arms, I really, really want to celebrate that you are doing exactly what you're saying, which is the huge sort of gap that is developmentally critical, which is not just to say the thing, but just actually to do something. And you created, as a badass entrepreneur, an actual offering in which I'm literally seeing you rise the tide, bringing other people into this game and creating real opportunities for breakthrough. So that's really cool, and that's worth celebrating, because I think that's a huge piece of what we're all trying to key into here at this axis of genius thing. Is not just to have a cool idea, not just to get visionary transmissions, but to really pragmatically, entrepreneurially lock that into helping other people have that experience. So you're doing that, which is amazing, and it's so awesome to be on the front row seat of that adventure. And then I feel like I also want to start linking some through lines, just in terms of like where some of these really cool inspirations come from. And, we were drawing a lot of inspiration from the one and only Mr. Eric Godsey, honorary PhD in my court. And I feel like one of the things I saw in his body of work a couple of years ago was he was really grokking this idea that, like, at a certain point, a monster becomes named. And the image that he used, which I feel like is such a classic and potent image, was like the ships were coming across the Atlantic Ocean, and the First Nations people, they saw it not as a ship. They saw it as like a strange amalgamation of like energy, and they just didn't have any conception for like what this thing coming over the
Mm,
horizon was. And he drew the parallel that it's like that's what's happening right now with our digital epoch, is this thing is coming and we don't have the names for it, we don't have the stories for it. And so out of that was born his shimmer cosmology. And it really is so beautiful to appreciate that within his kind of keying into and encoding and the way his mythological brain works, he really fundamentally demonstrated like the shift, or not, I don't even know if that's the right way of saying it. What I'm trying to point to is it's like he brought in the medical perspective, like he brought in like a medicine Buddha. He brought in the sense that there's a way of being in this that's going to liberate and empower and heal. And that for me, that's the kind of stuff that just like brings my whole body online. It's like I get chills in that, because it's like
mm-hmm.
so many people can look at the monster coming, put their hand in their mouth and say we're fucked. And that collapse, that sense of what you were just speaking to, like the plight of so many young men who's they're on their phones, they know they're addicted, and they know that they're suffering, they don't necessarily know what to do. There's such a powerful energy that moves through the individuals like yourself that are like, there's a way, actually this is solvable, and I'm going all in. I'm going to fully digitally incarnate into my home. I'm going to fully
Mm,
incarnate here, and I'm going to figure it out, and anyone who's tuning in is going to watch me learn and grow every single day as I'm doing this. I mean, that's exceptional, because it's vital, it's alive, it's wild. We've never been here before. It's a totally iterative, novel experience that we're currently in right in this very moment, doing all this. And
yeah,
that's so fresh.
yeah, yeah. It brings to mind just like the idea that um, kind of our egos are always catching up to current reality, and like there's like a
Mm,
lag, there's like a lag time, and but you can see that on like a societal level as well, or science, things like this sort of lag time. And I feel like what you're speaking to is there's an updating happening to this lag time where we're starting to maybe more arrive in like the different terrain that is our society now. And part of that is the shimmer, and I think part of that also is this kind of new wave of entrepreneurship and things like this. And coming back to Godzi again, I recorded this riff he said the other day, but giving people the permission to like run experiments in your life based on like what is stoking your fire right now, or maybe what's a problem that's very alive for you. Okay, so design an experiment, run the experiment. No matter if the experiment goes well or if it goes bad, share the story, because there's always really a great story. And when you run the experiment and you get good results and you're confident in them, turn it into a product, because there is probably many people who are suffering with the same exact thing. Like
mm,
create a recipe for how you got there and
mhm.
sell it, because the price tag literally is their incentive to actually take it seriously.
Yeah.
And it's this beautiful thing, and then that literally can be your life, because the greatest part is that solving our own problems is an infinite game. You're always going to have edges that you're refining in your life and things like this, and we each have a unique story of our the problems that we are faced to solve in this lifetime. And so maybe that's not for everyone, but I just it's alive because I've been talking to young men, and I've been thinking about you know what's the other path for someone who's realizing that they don't want to just go to college, go get the internship, and go to the start climbing the corporate ladder. What's the other way? And I just for the ambitious people out there, there's such a permission slip in that sort of frame of like
Mhm.
if you solve your own problems and you start to run the experiment with other people and you realize it's working, it's like, man, you have something. And it reminds me of the Steve Jobs quote that I saw you have on your website as well, that sort of realizing that our entire society has been literally built by people just like you and me,
Yeah.
and giving yourself that permission slip that you can influence society. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really nice tie-in to something I actually wanted to speak to earlier, which is kind of going back to basic ignorance, not really knowing things, figuring things out as we go, creating our little pie charts of knowledge and expertise and building out of that, which is, things look so different when you're in the arena. And this is a point that Josh Waitzkin, I think, hits home in such a beautiful way, which is, essentially the critique that, if anyone's on the sidelines and looking into people who are in the arena, you can say so many different things. It's like watching a movie. It's like, why in the world would the dude say that to the chick? It's like, doesn't he know he's going to blow his opportunity? Or, it's like, of course he should have gone left. Why did he go right? And it's like we can generate all these different critiques when we're on the sidelines and look at people on Instagram and we're like, they suck, and throw our poop at them all the while we're suffering inside. But like the first person's subjective experience of being in the arena is so fresh, it's so alive, and you actually can't bring your mental models into so many different experiences. It's really kind of this tie into what you're saying. Like there's this lag time of the ego where if you're really on a leading edge, say playing music or doing kickboxing or even just running through the forest, like if you're really on a leading edge, there's this beautiful thing in which like the self-arising, self-liberating nature of ego is like, it's just kind of following you along in that journey. And then reflection and refinement happens as one kind of contemplates the journey. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is I feel like we really need to emphasize a culture of celebration and co-learning for people who are in the arena, because I think so many of us carry these different wounds. I'll certainly cite like, conventional education system, the way that bonding often happens around sports, etc., where we're not fully celebrated, we're not fully understood, we're not fully clarified in the ways of relating to our own learning process and the ways that we're relating to, say, like going all in and seducing the muse of purpose to bring that fully alive. Like I feel like part of what we're up to here is like really making explicitly clear like what is that mindset of not only being in the arena ourselves, but really bringing along anyone who's playing that game and saying like, hey, this is actually going to be a really generative culture. This is going to be really beneficial. We're creating a flourishing understanding of how to be in deep support and love and care that isn't going to reinforce like wounds of separation and wounds of the educational systems we got. That's my little tie right there. It's just I feel it's so important that we're welcoming in a different layer of like love that's fueled up with this kind of determination of going for it too.
Yeah, man. So potent. Culture of celebration and co-learning. And I really love how it's celebration, not only celebration, but and co-learning. And it's something that really tracks within our own relationship, and that we can pump each other up and whatnot. And there's this deep sense of co-learning, because I don't think it can be one without the other. I think they want to be together, and that's sort of the secret sauce. And it reminds me of that quote I sent you from the book Peak. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it's just really which is a book tracking basically the styles of practice that lead to the greatest of the greats kind of thing. And one of the essential parts of it is like a really positive sense of validation. And, I think positive validation can sometimes get bastardized, and that I don't need validation. And when I say I need validation, I certainly need a lot of validation, and it's something that's helped me so much. And yeah, it reminds me of the idea that we are all called to being leaders in some way. And that doesn't mean having an Instagram following of 1 million followers. It can look so many different ways, but there is a community that we are called to lead. Every single human being on earth has that. And it ties into this idea as well of that there is a unique set of people that will uniquely resonate with you. Every single person has this, and it's your interests, your curiosities, what you're naturally drawn to, what you care about, what just you. Um, and so yeah, like when you're talking about creating this culture of celebration and co-learning,
Mm-hmm.
I think about anyone who has made the journey from from the bench to being in the arena. Like, I think in some way there is a responsibility to bring as many people onto the field as you can. And again, there's going to be the unique people who resonate with you in the way that you are trying to invite them into the game. And they resonate with the way that you are uniquely playing the game.
Yeah.
And and that's what's going to inspire them to come play the game as well. And, it makes me think about having an online community or something like this. Like, I think that's such a beautiful opportunity of the kind of new landscape is online communities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really feel like it's going to continue turning into this sort of beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Nature does diversification, nature does complexity. And we were riffing, I think, on the Alex Hormozy idea that, in a way, complexity is easier to communicate. And it's actually simplicity that's really, really hard, because when you speak a powerful idea in really simple and clear language, you've often done all the heavy lifting work around complexity to get to this place that's profoundly simple. And you're just like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a similar sort of pattern thing within validation, in the sense that, if validation is moving through this sense that, like, you shot the perfect 3-pointer and it just swoosh, there's something about validating what just went right in that process that is a simple and clear inroad for more 3-point swooshes. And I feel like in the sort of generative culture of like love and celebration and refinement, there's something about this appreciation that, hey, we're on this frontier of novelty and complexity, and we're choosing to go into new territories where the peril of what we're going into, say, like straight up AI doomer reality, or like, it's like terrible things could go wrong, like the stakes are high, but like the sense that, hey, we're here all in on the win-win scenarios, and we need like help to validate what is going right here, so that we can get through this birth canal and make the future super super good, like all the best things that we
Mm.
know are possible. Like, it's going to be each of us individually, collectively, and all of our communications validating what is working about that generative flourishing happening right here and now in reality, that's going to
Hmm.
get that happening here and now in reality. And
Yeah.
so I feel like there's, in the co-learning, it's also this culture of being like, check the quote unquote ego at the door, in the sense of learning and giving feedback and refining is just this constant humilizing. It's funny, the word humiliate is in there, but it's like humility is just all about just like being like so like surrendered to the basic soil out of which we're emerging from, which for me, I'll just put like being empty of self on the table there, which is, it's like I can be really humble to what's working and what's not working when I see that all my David Henry Rickenbach'ness is just a construction, and some parts were constructed well and other parts need some care and love and refinement. And then out of that, like, I don't need to like stress about being humiliated and embarrassed and shameful. I can just be like, oh, hallelujah, the upgrade is here, the refinement is here. Let's just keep growing and iterating. Like, I know I've been doing the best I can. I know I'm going to keep doing the best I can. Like, such as life. And that kind of compassion, like, really, I think supports just this iteration after iteration after iteration co-learning environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Becoming an infinite player,
Hmm.
like recognizing that the game doesn't end, and so there's a certain orientation that's birthed when we realize that, which is we're not going to survive this game if we can't hold compassion and
Hmm.
humility, and and not being angry or upset that we have to keep iterating, but just being like, great, you know Great. We get to keep iterating. We get to keep coming to these birth canals in better ways, and we're gonna keep finding these new edges that need refinement. And
Mm,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I want to kind of throw a curveball at you and switch lanes for a moment. And it's an idea that I've been thinking about. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about money, which is another one of these potent topics like social media in a way that sort of it's the game that we're having to contend with. And again, same with social media. There's a lot of wounding, there's a lot of shitty things attached to it. And at the same time, there seems to be a beautiful potential. So what I've been thinking about is this idea that some people have to that they just want to make enough money. They just want to make enough money, right? Like, just give me enough money so I can survive and pay my bills, and that's it. And I'm not trying to judge these people so much as I'm just curious about that sort of viewpoint. And what it makes me think about is that that sort of idea seems to be tied into this story that somehow if I am making more money, then someone else is making less money.
Mm,
And that if I am holding more resources, then it's taking away from other people's resources. So I'm just gonna take enough resources just so I can somehow survive or something, but nothing more.
mm,
Um, be, and the other idea that came forth to me around that is like, this is a bold statement, but in a way, if I feel like I feel like if people aren't at the place of saying, I want to make enough money so I am comfortable and feeling good and all of my needs are being met and I can kind of sort of do what I want, then there's like a part of me that wants to question that if they're not at that place, that there's some sort of story at play or something like this. And so I guess the kind of tension of the question and everything is this sort of finite versus infinite playing field within money. And so I'll throw the ball over to you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a deep one, and there's a lot of different angles to address. For me, I think the most important starting point is the nature of money itself. And I believe one of the people who's done the best work around describing this is Yuval Noah Harari in his book Sapiens. And in his book Sapiens, he really does a deep, deep, deep look into humanity, our species, civilization. It's one of those, 30,000 foot views of just where have we come from. And in that perspective, he makes it really clear money is a fiction. It's completely made up. There is nothing inherently valuable about the dollar bill. It's just an agreed upon fiction. And to really grok on a very foundational level that this is a story is powerful. Some people take that as like deeply depressing. It's so, so, so sad. That's so disempowering. Oh, it's just a story. And
What do you
other
mean
people,
it's just a story?
it's a fiction.
Can you
Is it?
explain that a little bit?
Yeah, no, it's just literally true. It's just literally a story. Whether it was once upon a time, like I have 30 seashells and you have 25 seashells, and we decide that when I give you my 30 seashells, you'll give me the wool from your sheep, and
Yeah.
that'll become the exchange system of the village. To now I have all this basically just symbols in my
Yeah.
bank account. Symbols go up, symbols go down. It's like I don't touch most of the money I'm
Yeah.
interacting with. Is literally just digital representations on a screen, and I trust that my bank has all of their documents in a row and all their institutional powers in a row. It's kind of this might not be satisfactory, but the way I look at it is it's literally turtles in every direction, in the sense of it's a made up story. It's turtles up, it's turtles down, it's turtles in every direction. There's nowhere out of which the story of money is not just a made up story. And some people
Mm.
are leveraging that story to great benefit, and other people are the victims of that story to great detriment.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Totally. Yeah. Do you want to keep going? You said there's many parts. That's the first one. That's a big one, and that's I think
Yeah.
that's one to what you're saying. When you fully understand that, when you fully grok that, which most people haven't,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's
exactly.
and I think the other just piece to tie into that, which I love this idea that Robert Anton Wilson introduced for me, that like money is a clear representation. Money is represented to the modern day human as our sense of survival.
Hmm.
So it used to be like tribal security. Were we a part of a network of people or not? If you weren't, you're probably going to die. If you were, you felt safe. That's been replaced by money. And so just another sort of money is a symbol to humans. And at this point in time, kind of money is a direct symbol of survival. So maybe when someone's saying, I want to make a lot of money in a way, it's like, I want to survive really well. And maybe
Hmm.
that survival turns into thriving.
Yeah.
Just to add
Yeah.
that.
Well, 100%. So I think where I'm trying to come from right now is like to really look at like the deepest philosophical underpinnings of money and seeing it as a made up story. And then I think where you're kind of naturally building on that is the way that our human psychology and our human sociology just gets tied up in all of this stuff, where now money becomes about survival, or money becomes about power, money becomes about resource allocation. And there's a really deep question in my own mind, which I don't have the answer to. And I've talked to a lot of people who understand economics really well. I'm still very much developing my own sort of mental model of how economics works. But on a very deep level, I do not understand clearly if economics is a win lose game or if it's a win win game, which is to say, it might be at this current stage of our society, out of the deep, roots of our history of, say, agriculture, and then from agriculture into industrialization, that
Mm.
in each of these stages, there are just win lose dynamics at play. One person does get more resources, and some people do get screwed over. Obviously, we had this deep history with slavery. And so some people were quite literally paid nothing and made to work, and other people, got all the benefit. So I think there's an important evolutionary game theoretic to
Mm.
put on the table there, which is it may very well be that the way that our capitalistic economics works right now is win-lose dynamics that are good for some people and really suck for other people.
Yeah.
That might be baked in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it seems like that it's different in different contexts. It's like there is very clearly examples within our culture where when someone makes a ton of money, it is at the expense of screwing over a ton of other people.
Hmm.
So like in that case, it's very true. When that person gets a lot more resources, a whole other group of people get screwed. But then there's other contexts, like I would say your life, for example. When you make money and you get more resources, it's not no one is losing because of you.
Hmm.
And in
Yeah.
fact, you could say that people are actually winning because you're winning,
Yeah.
right? And so I think the distinction that like maybe there's different contexts is
Hmm.
helpful.
Yeah, 100%. And you were actually riffing on this a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it was in the Forge, maybe it was on the podcast, but it's like how deeply we need to find our own story, around, say, what money means, or what our own life means, what our purpose means, what our value means, to like find it within ourselves to want to participate in the game. And I know
Mhm.
for myself, kind of exactly what you're speaking to, we're linking in my own mind that like I'm a healing artist and I serve people's healing and I serve their expression and I serve their flourishing. I, serve all these things that, really I find a lot of great joy and mastery in, and just being a quote unquote coach guide kind of guy, is that the linkage of, oh, if I have a lot of money in my bank account, that literally means I've just been helping a lot of people. Like money going up is being of
Yeah,
service, money going down, I'm not of service enough. Or maybe
yeah,
that's not
yeah,
the right way of saying it. It's just like, yeah, for me, in the ecological economic niche I have it, money is all directly tied to people being healed, liberated, flourishing, which that feels really good to me. That
yeah,
feels like an awesome way to make money.
yeah, yeah. This is such a important territory to be in right now. it reminds me of the social media conversation, um, because in the same way that, a lot of people who think that social media is bad or posting's bad or having a following is somehow inherently bad, they are equating that if you're posting or trying to become a influencer or something, you're the kind of person who is sitting down and asking the question of how can I hook all these people's attention spans, and like, there's like sort of yucky way of going about it, of I'm gonna just do whatever the frick I can so that, I get their attention and whatnot. I don't care if it's adding benefit. I don't care about any of that. I just want their attention, sort of thing. Um, and like what we're saying with social media is that there is 100% a different way to go about it. There's 100% a more beautiful way to live in your digital home and actually be of benefit, and sort of the idea that my followers are going up is actually a sign of benefit increasing. And so
Yes.
in the same way with money, it seems like someone who might say, I just want enough resources so I'm barely surviving, just so I have enough, but nothing more, is sort of operating under this story that if you're making more money, then it has to be done in the way of, if I have more resources, that means someone else is getting screwed over.
Yeah.
And so it just feels like such a valuable distinction here that, again, it entirely comes back to the person, the player within the arena,
Yeah.
and doing something that you genuinely believe is of value,
Yeah.
right? Like, I believe in what I'm doing. I know that I'm adding value. There's clear feedback loops of the people that I'm involved within, that they are receiving value. And that helps you as the person, like, really settle into, like, I'm doing a good thing here, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's a couple different through lines here. One is that, just to kind of try to tie in a thread about the win-lose dynamics, it may very well be that one of the precious opportunities of this time that we're in is the movement into win-win game dynamics. That might be truly something that we get to experience in our lifetime, and that our, children's generation gets to experience because of the way that technology and agriculture and economics and, just our culture, we might literally be liberating ourselves from, win-lose dynamics that have been super painful and deeply disturbing for our ancestors for a variety of reasons. So that's a really, really exciting possibility, and it's something I'm really keen on, trying to do my best and, make that the future horizon that we're living in. The other piece there, with really entering into like a generative sense, that, if someone's following Blake on Instagram, it's like they're going to be connected to a really healthy mindset around their creative expression. They're going to be discovering that they can do weight training with driftwood. It's like they're going to be into cold plunging and saunaing. It's like there's something about, and I'm drawing a little bit from, the beautiful medicine of Dustin DePerna here, where it's like at a certain point along the path, you realize that if you make your rainbow brighter, if you realize, fundamentally, David Henry Rickenbach is an empty construction, the best thing I can do to be of service is to make this the most vibrantly beautiful construction it can possibly be, because that's going to be of the most benefit to everyone. And
Mm,
so, I'm not of benefit to people if I'm broke. I'm of benefit to people if I have more than enough food that I can buy, such that I can, throw some extra food into the pot and make that a really big dish. It's like more people can sit at the table. And so I really feel like the altruism and the abundance comes online when you see that this is only going to get better. If I'm doing really well, that means you're going to be doing really well, because that's actually the goodness. And the other piece here, and this might be a little bit more philosophical, is it's like along the developmental journey, there's often, these places of doubt, like, am I a good person or am I a bad person? Am I altruistically generous or am I greedy? And it's like
yeah.
everyone needs to figure that out along the way. And that quote unquote like line, that's like the famous quote, is like that line of good and evil like runs through the heart of every man and woman.
Mm,
And so I think that's part of the toggle, right? And I've had a lot of
mhm.
deep medicine experiences where I've had some really interesting views into the human condition here. And it's like that movement into generative positivity of flourishing goodness, that, that's we could say is a part of a quote unquote spiritual war. It's like we're still on the battlefield. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who have a lot of wealth who are greedy motherfuckers, and they don't have a clear vision of how to share it.
Yeah.
And we would do
Yeah.
well to help them figure that out, because it would
Yeah.
really, help a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's such a potent area, and it can be so touchy and filled with so many projections. And certainly for me, that's why I've had so much resistance to being on social media more. That's why I'm doing the experiment. That's why I've had a lot of resistance to like selling and asking for money. Is because of this sort of wounding of the other way that we've seen it been done.
Yeah.
And I think it's why it's so can feel so edgy to talk about, because in a way we're like calling to all these people who are stuck within that story, who feel like they have to be broke because any other way is evil. And these people tend to be the ones who care the deepest, and they're stuck. And so I think part of this imagery of building the boat and helping as many people as we can as we are moving along that are drowning is like really sounding that alarm that, yo, you don't have to be broke. You don't have to struggle in that way. And that
Yeah.
actually, when you're not struggling in that way, you get to be so much more benefit. And it's not evil, it's not manipulative. There is a good way of doing this. And it's, it can feel so, yeah, touchy to say that,
Yeah.
because there's so much there. But yeah.
Mhm. Well, 100%. And I really do feel like for me, bringing in this Buddhist sense of like the emptiness of self is such the liberatory medicine. And, a lot of people who are listening might not be able to grok this thread, and it'll be worth trying to unpack it in a very grokkable way, because it's so liberating in such a meaningful, heartfelt way. And it's like the exact opposite of spiritual bypassing, but it might sound really bypassy what I'm about to say, which is to say, like, the discontent, sick, I think making money is the bane of the world, like that whole image like of self that arises, that's like with people who have a lot of money, or with people who are quote unquote participating in capitalism. That image is as empty as the image of someone who's absolutely crushing it, who's making entrepreneurial contributions, who's of service to people's happiness and benefit. Like, they're equally empty, but one just happens to feel super fucking good, and the other happens to really suck. Like, it happens to really feel shitty. And it's like, at the end of the day, or even the beginning of the day, whatever time of the day it is, it's just like, do you want to feel good?
Yeah.
For real, like, do you want to feel good?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to feel good. Like, let's feel
Yeah.
really great.
All right, well, let's unpack this, because I do think this is worthwhile unpacking. But for people who maybe don't track emptiness of self, what does that mean? Things like this. But a part of how it lands for me when you say that is like, okay, so let's just say everything's meaningless. Your actions have no meaning. Whatever. Let's just orient to what feels good and what is fun. And it kind of is the same idea of like, okay, no one knows objective truth. We are all seeing through our own filters and everything like this. Okay, cool. So there's nothing's true. Everything's true. Everything's equally true. So then what do we want to do? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
want to have fun. You want to feel good, and that happens to probably be not being broke, complaining about money all day, but being like in a flourishing ecosystem and doing things
Mhm.
that genuinely fill your cup. So
Yeah.
let's unpack it a bit.
Yeah, yeah. It's so important to get this one right? Because you can feel the nihilism in that of like, oh, let's just feel good, and YOLO, we only live once. Like, we're out drinking tonight. Like, it doesn't matter if I sleep around. It's like, get it while the getting's good, and fuck it. And it's like, that's not the right view at all. I think what's really, really helpful here is the baseline of suffering. Like, suffering is so foundational to the human experience. And on the one hand, we want to say, like, yeah, you want to feel really good, and all these things that, make you feel good are worthwhile. Like, we can communicate that from a really healthy perspective of, having gone through the arduous thing. It's like, on the other side of a workout, you feel really great, and you're like, yeah, of course you should burst through your resistance. Like, get through the other side. Like, you'll feel awesome. Easy to say on the other side of a workout, because you're just like, I just did it, I feel great. The suffering piece, like the hell realm piece, the sense of deep pain and wounding and all these things where you're like, oh my god, like I feel horrible inside, and like, now you're telling me that it's like not even real or something like this, is like, there's so much nuanced sensitivity that we need to really be able to like deeply honor, deeply validate the authenticity of people's profound pain and suffering. But at the same time, it's like wounded people wound the world, like traumatized people traumatize the world. It's like we need to be really healthy to communicate the healthy vision that genuinely helps people. And so there's a lot of hidden loyalties often that people have when it comes to like quote unquote trying to help people in pain and suffering, which is it's kind of like a trauma bonding where it's like, okay, if I'm feeling traumatized, then I can relate to someone else who's feeling traumatized, and we can be in that pain and suffering together. And, you know, we can validate that it's real. And we don't have that many good examples of people who are like, I'm extremely healthy, I'm doing really well, I'm flourishing, and I care a lot about people who are in deep pain and suffering. And I'm going to offer you a way out of that, not because I'm going to bond with you there and not because I'm going to reinforce that it's real. I'm going to validate that it feels really real, but I'm also going to like give you those breadcrumbs out of it so you can not stay there. Because ultimately when you get out of those places of pain and suffering and wounding, it feels like it was a dream. It doesn't feel like it was ever really. You're like, of course you might have the scars, you might have the memories and stuff, but on another level, it's like it also will feel like a dream. It'll feel like a mirage. You're like, wow, I can't believe the ways that I was so locked up inside. And so it's a funny catch 22 where it's like on the one hand it feels so real when you're in it, but on the other hand it's
Yeah.
also quite illusory.
Yeah. It seems
Especially
so
if you,
obvious on the other side.
right?
Definitely tracks in my experience. I feel like how was I so lost in that? How it it just feels like the fog lifted and yeah, like a dream. Really, for me, it feels like the brain fog lifted and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Mm,
So really well said, man. I feel like this is a good place to bring her home.
yeah.
So I think this was our longest episode yet.
Mhm.
Any final words for the listener before we close out?
Um, smash that like button.
Of course, we were getting there. Leave a like, subscribe, share it.
Oh my gosh. South Park continues to be like the funniest thing. They just released an episode with Pete Hegseth, and the basic like through line of the episode is calling Pete Hegseth a douche. And it's like the whole thing is like, you know, him like trying to create content for social media rather than like actually run the government. So funny, man. It's
Those
just
guys are
so
geniuses.
it's so on point. So anyway, we'll just end maybe with a little shooting the shit here.
Amazing. Well, thank you to anyone who's still hanging out with us. It's a good
Yeah,
one. It's great to have you here.
absolutely. You're on the deep end.
Yeah, yeah. You're in the 1%. Welcome. This is the best. This is the best it gets.
Get cozy next to her mom's.
It's all downhill from here.
Yeah, no more popcorn.
All right, man. Until the next one.
Until next one. Ciao.